This video is brought to you by Dynamic Custom Beadworks, now officially licensed by Capcom. Check them out at dynamicbeadworks.com now to get your own custom video game sprites. What's going on, everybody? J-Kun here, and welcome to another episode of the Primecast, a little podcast that I like to do that has no rhyme or reason when it comes to scheduling, where a group of us get together, talk about video games, movies, and just whatever strikes our fancy at the time. And in classic form, I am not alone in this endeavor. We are doing a summer movie wrap-up. I know we did this last year, and it came a little earlier than this year, but real-life problems did tend to get in the way. So I figured we better get on the ball and do this before it becomes completely irrelevant. So joining me tonight, he was here with the last podcast about movies, and that is none other than my father, Papa J-Kun. Go ahead and say hi.
What's up, folks?
And last but not least is a guy that he wasn't on the movie podcast, but he was on the last video game podcast, and he actually saw the majority of the movies with me this summer, and that is the host of the Cooking Dojo, Justin Kontovich. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Alright. So, if it seems like a little lackluster of an intro here, I do definitely apologize, because we were already part of the way through the podcast and realized that my mic was muted for God knows how long. About 13 minutes. Yeah, about 13 fucking minutes that the mic was muted. So, we had enough time to talk about an entire movie before I actually caught it. Now, for those of you that are accustomed to watching the Primecast as usual, and I forgot to mention this when the mic was muted, so good thing I'm bringing it up now. I'm not a big fan of just the still frame photo and just something for you to listen to. I like to have something moving on the screen. I don't know what it's going to be yet, probably some game footage. I'll figure that out in the editing part. That way there's something moving on the screen and you have something to entertain yourself while you listen to us drone on for the next couple hours. So, getting right to business, we're going to go ahead and start with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Guys, I am sorry that we have to rehash this again, so let's keep it short and sweet.
No problem.
Yeah. So, ultimately, I thought it was an excellent successor to the first movie. Certain characters definitely took a backseat to more prevalent characters, like the movie kind of revolving around Peter Quill, which was fitting, being that the movie involved him and his actual father, and then his father figure in Yondu. Comedy felt kind of forced in some cases, more specifically when we were dealing with Drax, but hey, Drax is supposed to be completely literal, so that kind of makes sense. Anything you guys would like to add?
So I'll start off. So I actually liked it as well as the first film.
Mm-hmm.
Some things I like better, worse than others. Like, I definitely thought that the villain in 2 was definitely a lot more memorable than Ronan was.
Yeah.
I'm with Justin on that situation. Parts of it, I mean, a very good sequel. Parts of it up, parts of it down. Not really many downsides on it. I mean, a lot of good comedy and some good action and a good story you could get your head around. And it was kind of interesting how finding his dad, you know, turned out to be a really amazing thing at the beginning, and then the longer it got in, you know, the more it started to turn into, it's like peeling back the layers. You know, he couldn't believe what he was finding, and that made it interesting. I enjoyed that.
Yeah. All right.
And Baby Groot was a killer. So.
Oh, like, honestly, if Baby Groot wasn't hilarious and adorable, something would have been very, very wrong with that picture. I will definitely say this, and it's something you're going to see me touch on a couple times later on down the list and everything, is something was brought to my attention, and when I really sat and thought about it, I was like, holy shit, that's actually true. It's a very Marvel movie, and I say that in the sense for it follows a very specific formula, and Marvel has that formula down pat at this point, to the point that, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Which is why, like, you'll go and look at something like the very first Iron Man, and then you turn around and go look at something like Doctor Strange, which was released last year, you kind of sit there and go, holy shit, that's pretty much the exact same movie. And this one kind of strayed from that just a little bit, but for most part, the Marvel formula was definitely there. Like, make it funny, give it a good amount of action, put some story in there, there has to be a heroic sacrifice at the end, boom, you got a Marvel movie. And I just kind of sat there and went, ain't that a bitch? They did that shit here too.
Well, the Guardians also are a way different type of team than the Avengers.
And I will definitely agree with that. I remember when I saw that they were making a Guardians of the Galaxy movie, the first thought I went through my head was, why? You have more than enough material right there on Earth to make movies for the rest of your days. Why are you touching on these guys? But ultimately, it's something that I'm very glad they wound up doing, and doing the research that I tend to do when it comes to comic book movies. Finding out that the Guardians of the Galaxy are a much bigger part of the Marvel Universe than I thought. So I'm glad that the movies are around. So.
And I can't wait to see them in Avengers 3.
Yep. Alright, so let's go ahead and move down the list. I will go ahead and say this for the audience listening in. There may be some movies on this list that all of us didn't see, or maybe one or two of us saw. So if we do wind up glazing past your movie, I do apologize. But there's only so much money and time in the summer to see every single movie that comes out. Alright, so the next one up on the list is from like cult film fame, Guy Ritchie, King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. Did anyone see that one?
I did not.
I passed on seeing that one after seeing a couple of the previews, and it really just wasn't stirring my interest that much, so I took a pass on that one.
Yeah, and like normally I like Guy Ritchie, and I'm a big fan of Charlie Hunnam, especially since like I watched every single episode of Sons of Anarchy, and I thought he was excellent in Pacific Rim. But yeah, this was one where I just kind of sat there and went, they're telling the King Arthur story again? Pass. Alright, so that's strike one, I guess.
I understand people taking a shot at something like that when they want to kind of put their spin on a classic story.
Yeah.
And sometimes something like that really works. But I think that one of the things that suffers from it is that you can only cram so much in a 2-minute 30-second trailer.
Yeah.
And if you don't get folks on the hook with that, then it's going to die pretty badly. And I didn't see anything other than it being a retelling of it, anything that really made you say, wow, I really want to see that.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm normally like, I'm right on board with a Guy Ritchie movie. Like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels was really funny. Snatch was even more funny. But this one around, I was just kind of like, if I want to watch something about King Arthur, I'll watch Excalibur. That's kind of like the holy Bible when it comes to King Arthur at this point. So, alright, so moving on to the next on the list. I know me and Justin saw this one, and this one was a Fathom Events movie. Now, Fathom Events come around every now and then. They're generally like a one-night showing, and depending on the movie, if you didn't get to see it in the theater, you'll be able to download it digitally the very next day. This one was definitely no exception, but when it comes to Fathom Events, this is just my personal 2 cents. Go see them in the theater if you can, because they usually wind up being worth it. So the next movie is Resident Evil Vendetta. Now, this one, thank God, was based on the video game franchise, and it actually ties directly into their storyline instead of whatever the hell Paul W.S. Anderson has been doing with his movies. And
that fan fiction stuff? Yeah, I don't watch that.
Yeah. Hey guys, look at my hot wife do cartwheels and carry big guns. Like, we saw it 5 movies ago, we don't want to see it anymore, stop.
Every time I hear that kind of thing, I honestly, I cannot get past the statement that she made by saying that, folks, if you're going to complain about the movie, stop going to see them, and then we won't make them anymore.
That is true.
Somebody is fueling the tickets on it that keeps them making them, and I'm with her all the way on that. So
Yeah.
I was way ahead of her.
Yeah, like what she said that around Resident Evil 4, like the 4th or 5th one that they made, and I was like, motherfucker, you lost interest with me back past the second one. You pissed me off in the first one, and then the second one was kind of okay, and then you made your way to the third, and I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Alright, so Vendetta follows the game storyline. It's one of 3 CG movies that they have done. So shout outs to like Capcom Japan, because the CG movies have actually wound up being really, really good if you can take how over the top they can get.
Yes.
This one follows Leon Kennedy and Chris Redfield meeting up again ever since Resident Evil 6. Available on every console known to man at this point. And it also brings back a old favorite from the first game, Rebecca Chambers, and she winds up, and it kind of made me sad to say this, but she winds up playing the damsel in distress, which kind of sucks, being that she survived not 1, but 2 games on her own, dealing with the living dead, and I'm just kind of like, well, ain't that a kick in the nuts? But the CG style of it is really, really good. Capcom still has that weird habit of putting so much emphasis on a character's teeth that you forget they have lips. But if you can get past that, that's fine. But the part that just kind of got me at this point was just kind of how over the top they got with some of the stuff. Like, I think the best example I can give is Leon on a highway on a Ducati motorcycle being chased by 2 zombie dogs.
Shooting down a highway sign with a handgun.
Thank you. I was getting to that. And drops the sign on the dogs. That didn't stop him. So he throws and then shoots a grenade, and that didn't stop him. And then it was swinging around the motorcycle and then kicking one in the head, and that finally dropped him. And I was just kind of like, alright. And then
who in the world dreamed up that action sequence?
I don't know, but I'm pretty sure they worked on Final Fantasy at some point. But, then you get to other parts that you sit there and go, wow, that's actually legitimately cool. Where Leon and Chris are in, like, this tight corridored hallway trying to make it to an elevator, so they're dealing with like 1 round at a time shots and close quarter combat, and they're just kind of John Wicking their way up the hallway, and that part looks absolutely awesome. And then you get to the roof, and Chris and the main antagonist, and his name escapes me at the moment, are shooting at each other literally 2 feet away from each other, and the only thing that played out in my mind is, remember when we were younger and we would grab the sticks that looked like guns and we'd run around and going bang 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 bang, I got you, no I got you, no I got you, I got you, bang bang bang. That's how it played to me, and I could not stop laughing. And not only that, they are doing this on a glass ceiling. And I'm just like, I'm just waiting. This thing's gonna go. I know it is. And
It sounds so much like the finish of the first John Wick movie. I mean, when I saw that, I was so impressed with them not having a guy, that was just spraying bullets everywhere. He's doing these double taps, and I mean, when he pointed and he shot, he kills somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like it lived up to the billing of him being a trained killer.
Yeah.
And his mystique, but then it got to the end of the movie and he's in a car and the car gets filled with automatic fire bullet holes, and nobody said this was a bulletproof car.
Right.
And how do you have bullet holes from the front wheel all the way to the back wheel, but none of them got through to the driver? You know,
and see, they took
getting that. You know?
They took that Deus Ex Machina out with John Wick Chapter 2, where they just straight up gave him a bulletproof suit.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was like,
I
okay.
could buy that better, really.
So, one of the things I really liked about Resident Evil Vendetta, I love how they always get the voice actors from the games to be in these.
Yes, now I did love that.
Yeah, definitely over the top. I mean, were those zombie dogs made out of, like, adamantium? Because one of them jumped on the hood of a car and, like, destroyed the car.
Yeah, like it jumped on one front of a car and just made a crater in the thing. And I was just kind of like, aren't you supposed to be decaying? I didn't know when you decayed you got heavier.
The villain, yeah, I know you agreed with my statement here. He was just a
he was your
more
typical
pathetic
Resident
version
Evil.
of Simmons from Resident Evil 6.
Yeah, he was your typical Resident Evil villain. That isn't Wesker.
Yeah, he was just Simmons, but he was Diet Simmons, basically.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the Rebecca thing, you know, that I did want to see her do a lot more. I guess the reason it didn't bother me is, you know, at this point it's implied she's been like a researcher all her life.
Yeah, she hasn't been practicing in combat.
Now, if this was like Jill Valentine or even Claire Redfield doing that, then I'd be like, yeah, okay, I don't think you need to be the damsel in distress.
If it were Jill Valentine, she would have found a way to jimmy the cuffs off and probably would have just beat the dude senseless.
Yeah.
It would have been like that scene from Earthworm Jim. It was like, I have the strength of 10 men! Or 10 man-sized crows. And then you just see the bad guy go hauling ass out the room.
Something I am curious, though, about the CGI movies, if they decide to continue with those, is... This was after 6, so I'm starting to wonder, how does Resident Evil 7 fit into this timeline?
And that is a question that we are still trying to figure out, because... And not to stray too far off topic, but it is Resident Evil, so it is technically related. We have no clue where 7 drops in this timeline. We know it's sometime after 6. I can only assume that this movie takes place before 7, since Redfield does show up at the end of 7. And we were supposed to get that Chris Redfield DLC back in March. And we're not going to get it until Christmas, so nobody has a fucking clue where this movie lands as far as the timeline goes.
But I do hope they continue with them.
Oh yeah, definitely. It wasn't as good as Damnation. Damnation was the second CGI movie, but it's already leaps and bounds better than what the live-action films have been doing, which has been taking the characters we know and love and then just shattering our dreams completely. So... Because look at me, I'm Mila Jovovich, I'm wearing something skimpy again. Oh look, there goes Rosie Perez and a fucking industrial fan. Well, she's dead, moving on.
And you know, thankfully Capcom Japan is working on these movies, kind of like, I like that Marvel is doing the Marvel movies, so they know the source material and love what they're doing.
Yeah. And like, I've always gotten that, like, I look at the CG movies and I just imagine some Capcom Japan executive coming in, grabbing the script of a Resident Evil movie and just slapping Paul W.S. Anderson in the face with it and going, Daddy's gonna take care of this.
Everybody's got to have a fantasy.
Right? But alright, let's go ahead and move on to the next film. And I don't think either of you saw it, or if you did, you certainly didn't tell me about it, and that was Alien Covenant. Now...
I did miss that one.
Yeah.
I'll be frank right up front. You told me that you were going to see it, and I honestly have kind of been done with the Alien franchise for quite a few years.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the first one was to me was a genuine horror action film, and the second one was spectacular, and my interest waned with every subsequent sequel after that. So I mean, I really felt like I was gonna wait and get your verdict on this, and I remember you calling me that night and telling me that sucked. So I knew at that point there was no way I was going. So
and see, that's the thing. That's really the thing. It's like, after Prometheus, and I'll be straight up honest, I liked Prometheus. Like, take it all the way back to the beginning and tell us how we got to this point. I was cool with that, and I actually wound up liking the movie. It changed our perspective completely on what we thought was what we used to call the space jockeys. They are now the engineers. And what we thought they looked like is not how they looked at all. I was, oddly enough, okay with that. And with it being Ridley Scott, like, I was automatically on board, because I was like, well, I mean, hey, his baby is in his hands again, so let's see what he does with it. And Alien Covenant... It just goes...
The sound of exasperation.
It just goes to show how much he hates James Cameron. Because, good God, everything we thought we knew about the aliens, from what we learned from the first film to the second to the third and fourth films. Well, just the first, second, and third. We don't talk about the fourth one. But he took everything, and I do mean everything, about the lore, and just threw it in the fucking garbage. And he was like, nope, the aliens were made. They are not indigenous to any planet. David made them. So a cyborg, yep. Made an alien species, yep. And his basis for this species was us. Uh-huh. Tell me where I've missed some steps here, Ridley.
Was the premise supposed to be that the cyborg created the aliens with the intent of wiping out humans because he had a vendetta against them?
I think that's pretty much what they were going with, but it wasn't, in my opinion, explained properly, I guess you could say. You have, like, this little blurb at the beginning where, like, Michael Fassbender is there, and I think, what, Guy Pearce, I think his name is the guy that's playing Wayland. And they have, like, this little explanation of, like, I'm human, and I created you, and, well, if you created me, then who created you, type of thing. And that's obviously where we got Prometheus from. But David kind of coming to the conclusion that, okay, you made me, and you made me in your image, but I can't die, and you can. That means I'm the superior being. And everything just kind of spun out of control after that, where we finally find out what happens to the chick from the first movie. David killed her, and then went to the engineer's planet and killed all of them, and he's just been sitting here on the engineer's planet, just kind of chilling, playing the flute and growing out his hair until more visitors showed up.
Now,
wow.
You had told me about Alien Covenant when we were waiting for another movie, and based on what you told me, that's I don't mind, like, a little plot twist or something, but I hate it when they totally retcon the original thing.
Yeah, and that's what I feel like he kind of did with this one. Now, I will say this, there were some points that I did like, but you look at it and go, you clearly got that from somewhere else. And it was the interaction between David and, I want to say his name was Frank, something like that. It was another android, looked just like David, played by the exact same guy. And I remember telling Dad about this, because we're both big Star Trek fans. And I told him, I was like, you remember Data and Lore, right? And he was like, oh yeah, absolutely. I was like, that was David and this guy. That was exactly what this was. Except this time around, Lore won and not Data. So
that's because there was no Picard to fend him off.
Yeah, there you go. I will definitely say this to the movie's credit. This was one of the first times I saw Danny McBride and didn't want him to die. Every movie I see him in, I'm just like, oh God, something bad just happened to you. I fucking hate you. And this time around, I was just kind of like, I kind of hope he makes it. which he ultimately did. It came down to like him and I think it was like the wife of the captain of the ship or something like that. They were down in the hangar bay. It was just them two and the alien, and I was like, okay, like let something cool happen, and then like they shove it out an airlock or some shit, and lo and behold, that's what they did. So they gave me that at least.
Because that hasn't happened before.
Well, I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But alright, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie on the list. I saw this one, and I warned you not to go see it, Dad. I don't know if you saw it, Justin, and that's Baywatch.
Yes, you did warn me, so I stayed away from it.
That was actually one of those things where when I had seen a trailer for it initially, I had high hopes about that because I was thinking, great, you know, they took this ridiculous TV show, they were going to spoof the daylights out of it, and I know The Rock can do comedy.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had high hopes that was actually going to be a real stick your tongue all the way in your cheek and laugh your brains out, you know, kind of thing. And then you saw it and told me how bad it sucked.
Yeah, it was really bad. And like that was the thing. I kind of had the same high hopes as you did. I was like, okay, this premise is ridiculous to begin with. I hope they take that ball and run with it.
Yeah. And
it was just 90 minutes of, look, I'm The Rock and I look great when I'm flexing with my shirt off, and I'm funny, but I'm also a dickhead. And then there's Zac Efron, who, hey, I look great when I'm flexing with my shirt off, and I'm kind of funny, but I'm also a giant dickhead. But
I have an inferiority complex because I'll never be as big as The Rock.
No shit. Now, one thing I will definitely say that did make me laugh throughout that movie was when they did the Baywatch training. You're training to be on Baywatch, and they're hefting refrigerators down the sand.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And I'm sitting there and I am laughing at it because Zac Efron is sitting there going, these are refrigerators. This has nothing to do with saving people. And I probably laughed the hardest at that one because, damn, he's fucking right. But overall, it was completely forgettable. The only thing I can really say about the plot is, like, there's a drug deal going on. And the running gag throughout the entire film wound up being, you're lifeguards. You're not cops. Go back to the beach. And they are told this several times throughout the film. And I'm just kind of sitting there going, you know, the cop's right. Go back to the fucking beach.
Something that you just said I thought was interesting. Now, I never watched Baywatch when it was on TV, but you said there was a lot of emphasis on The Rock and Zac Efron, but I always thought people watched Baywatch for the girls.
And yeah, that's something that I really feel like they missed. Like, yeah, like the girls on Baywatch in the TV show, they were the kind of the center of attention. Because you had people like Pamela Anderson, you had Carmen Electra, and a couple others. But this one focused on The Rock. And I don't know about you guys, that's not the Baywatch I remember.
Well, I mean, the trend lately has always been to take whatever an original was and reverse the gender.
Yeah, that's
on
true.
It. So instead of it being an eye candy thing for guys, they turned it into an eye candy thing for girls.
Which I don't know a single woman that went to see the movie. So,
well, see, the thing I think they missed along the way is that if the girls were probably never watching the TV show,
yeah,
why would they be so worried about seeing the movie?
And like, I was expecting like just nothing but like a snowstorm of slow-mo bits. Yes. They didn't do a single slow-mo bit until the very end of the film. Because, spoilers, Pamela Anderson does make a cameo, and so does David Hasselhoff.
The Hoff.
Yeah, people love the Hoff. But it's like, Pam Anderson, she comes back as like the new boss of Baywatch or some shit like that. And everyone's just kind of sitting at the table going, is it just me, or is everything moving slower when she's here? And she's just, like, holding herself up against the table and just, like, throwing her hair back, and everything's in slow-mo. They're moving at regular speed. and just looking at this going, something ain't right. But yeah, overall, just like, it had the potential to be like the comedy of the year, and it just fell flat on its face.
It's not often you see a Rotten Tomatoes reading of 18%. Holiday. That's way down there.
Yeah. Next up on the docket, and I won't lie to you, I didn't finish watching this movie because I lost interest. And that's Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Men Tell No Tales. Did any of you guys see this?
Yeah, I totally missed that one.
Alright.
I actually haven't even seen the one that was before that.
On Stranger... Yeah, that one was boring. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, I thought a movie that completely and totally revolved around Jack Sparrow would be entertaining. I was wrong.
I didn't see it. I've honestly never been a fan of the franchise from the beginning, so yeah.
And that's kind of
totally out of the loop on that.
That's kind of a bad thing, because, like, the first 3 movies weren't bad. They weren't bad at all. Like, Barbossa was absolutely entertaining. Jeffrey Rush. The parts with Jack Sparrow had its moments of being highly entertaining, and then, of course, you had Orlando Bloom as Bill Turner. And just, like, going back and seeing those movies, you recognized a bunch of people like, holy shit, that was him. But, yeah, it just kind of really fell off on the 4th movie, which is why I think with the 5th movie they were like, fuck it, bring Orlando Bloom back. And even that wasn't enough. Like, I maybe got like 30 minutes in, and I was just kind of like, I'm done. Alright, so, moving on to the next movie. This is one I know all of us saw, and that is Wonder Woman.
Yes, that movie was awesome.
Yeah. Definitely a gigantic step in the right direction for what the DC Cinematic Universe needed. Because, I mean, they were already losing fan base with Man of Steel. It got even worse, even though I don't particularly agree with Batman v Superman. Suicide Squad didn't live up to expectations, even though, like, I gave it a glowing review last year. But I can see why it rubbed some people the wrong way. So Wonder Woman was a very nice breath of fresh air into what is becoming this DC Cinematic Universe leading up to Justice League.
Well, I know for me, Wonder Woman was a huge, pleasant surprise because I was skeptical about how they would handle a standalone. I mean, I really enjoyed her appearance in Batman v Superman, so that helped to set the stage. But I was really curious how well they were going to do, you know, a standalone story about her. But much to my surprise, that I think they hit it out of the park, and I think they did for a couple of really vital reasons. Number one, I thought the idea of moving the time setting to World War I thought was, you know, that was a brain shot to do that, because it gave a much different setting, and you know, we've already the business of Captain America and other things like that, you know, already that dealt with the whole World War II era, and I know that's a different universe, but still, I mean, moviegoers, so many of them don't delineate those things.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I really enjoyed about it was the way that they set the stage. Chris Pine played fantastically against her, you know, as far as the characters playing off of each other, both with comedy and both with dramatic elements, and, you know, the role that he felt like that he had to play. But the bigger than that, I think the thing that I really enjoyed was that when it came to her using her abilities, you know, it was things that she did that had an impact on what was going on at the moment. It was never it always seems like a superhero film turns into something that has a global scale.
Yeah.
And this was never that. Now, I mean, the implications of what, you know, the Nazis were trying to do, you know, yeah, that had bigger impact, but I mean, she was focusing on those things that were happening then, and changing what, you know, she had the ability to do then. And
well, I mean, were they even the Nazis yet in World War I? Weren't they just the Germans?
Well, that was the rise of it.
Okay.
That was the essence. That was the beginnings. So that whole aspect, and the other thing, the way they played in to the business of her trying to discover the god of war, and thinking that if she stopped the guy that was at the head of the German army, that that was the solution, and they played really well off of that.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that whole aspect of it. And the other thing, I mean, gets back to the whole global scale, but the big showdown, climactic scene at the end did not involve leveling half the planet.
Oh no, just one weapons facility.
It was there. It was right there at that. It had that impact, and the people that were there. I mean, they saw her, and it's like the kind of thing that creates lore like that, and that whole aspect, the scale they did of it, and the way they used her and him together, I thought was some of the best stuff I've seen in a long time.
Yeah. Now, I did have one gripe with the movie, and it wasn't over the performance or anything like that. If anything, I thought the twist right there at the end, where it was like, okay, she's here to kill this guy, and she's killed this guy, and shit, nothing's changed, and you make her lose all hope, and then poof, here's Ares. And it's the guy that's been helping her along, and it's just like, oh, holy shit. And as I don't want to say like a avid fan, but I do like Wonder Woman, but I don't read her books or anything like that. I did know that Ares is one of her main enemies, and I was like, wow, they're actually being brave enough and doing this on the first movie. Bravo, and they did it well. So I was just like, oh, nice. But
that was another thing I liked about it was her backstory on Themyscira. I thought they did well, and I especially enjoyed, when her mother was reading her the stories as a kid, the way they animated the old Renaissance style paintings.
Yeah.
To tell that backstory, I thought that was a great way to deliver a lot of information effectively, without it having to be some kind of crazy flashback thing or something, but I thought that was really good.
Now, showing Ares as a homely, mustached man in a suit, when that's what he's portraying, I was like, okay, well, that's fine and everything. But when he put on the armor and all that shit, and then they zoomed in on the helmet, and it's still that homely-looking guy with the mustache, and I'm like, you couldn't have CG'd that a little?
I think part of that happens, to provide consistency for the audience that doesn't have. I mean, people like you and a lot of the other people, that are familiar with the comic books and a little bit more familiar with the background of particular superheroes, they pick up on that type of thing.
Yeah.
But a vast number of the audience does not, and they need that continuity to hold their attention.
And see, like, I don't know Justin's background when it comes to Wonder Woman. The majority of my background on Wonder Woman is stuff like the Justice League animated series, where I think they only showed Ares once, and he just looked like this tall, strapping young man. But the most of mine is from Injustice, Gods Among Us, like the very first game, because he was actually in the roster. And how he looked in the roster, it was just kind of like one of the statues of Ares just got up and started walking, and that's just how he looked. Like, the face was, like, cracked and stone-looking, and I was just kind of like, I kind of like that better.
Yeah, I don't really have too much familiarity with her rogues gallery other than names and faces. But, I definitely know, like, her background story, and I think, especially with her, this being her first theatrical movie, I thought they did really well.
Oh, yeah.
Especially since Gal Gadot really had no acting credentials prior to this.
Yeah, like, she had a Fast and the Furious movie under her belt, and that was kind of about it.
And that was just, like, as, like, a bikini girl in the background, I think.
Yeah. Well, she was Han's girlfriend for a couple movies. But, yeah, overall, dynamite first try. It really was. It was... If it wasn't for the fact of something else being on this list being as good as it would have been hands down the best superhero movie of the summer.
Yeah, I think it was honestly one of the best superhero movies for, well, non-Marvel movies. I thought it was one of the best ones in quite some time.
Oh, yeah. Alright, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is the remake of The Mummy. Now, this one, it was met with a lot of skepticism because Tom Cruise is in it, and I understand a lot of people don't like Tom Cruise, but I'm not on that boat, so I was like, why not? Give it a try. So this movie was a remake with something that Universal is trying to do, kind of following in Marvel's footsteps and everything, where all the following movies are going to be connected to this one, and something that they're calling the Dark Universe. Tom Cruise's character, don't remember his name at all. Pretty forgetful name, if you really want to get down to it. And the fact that, like, a lot of people looked at this movie and they were like, wow, they're remaking the one with Brendan Fraser? No. They are remaking the very first one. And the mummy this time around is a woman. And I forget her name because I'm horrible with names, but I'd have had a hard time killing her. But as they progressed through the movie, Tom is... I like to categorize Tom in certain stages when it comes to his movies. Like, there's A Few Good Men Tom, there's, like, Born on the 4th of July Tom, there's Minority Report Tom, and then my personal favorite, Edge of Tomorrow Tom Cruise, where he's being a badass, but he's being a badass by accident, and it comes off as funny. And he is definitely in Edge of Tomorrow mode in this movie.
Well, I will give Tom Cruise credit. There have been some things that he's done that I thought was amazing. Mm-hmm. And that I think The Last Samurai is probably on the top of my list.
That's apparently that's like, after doing some research and shit, apparently that's one of the movies that people hate the most.
Which is kind of ironic, you know, but yeah. And I mean, I think what it is, there's been so many times that, and I've heard, you know, and read things about how he's come on board and he's put his input in and wind up changing things, you know, because it's always kind of a repetitive Top Gun character. You know, I'm the guy who's the hero, and I'm going to have my dilemma, my self-doubt or whatever that I've got to get over, but, you know, I'm going to come up and kick the world's butt in the end.
Yeah.
But I also give the guy huge credit that he dives in and he makes projects where he's lending his star power to, and let's face it, he's got that.
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of times he does these films on spec where he's banking on getting paid on how well the film does.
Yeah.
Because he personally wants to see this stuff get made. And I got to give him big props for that. And when Kenneth Branagh did Mary Shelley's Frankenstein,
mm-hmm.
I thought that was a phenomenal film, and everybody said that, and that's why he entitled it Mary Shelley, was because he was getting back to the source material.
Yeah.
And that's what, you know, I read and heard same thing that they were doing with this. They wanted to get away from what Hollywood had done to the Mummy over the years, and let's get back down to the essence of what the whole story was about. Now, even though I didn't see it personally, and a lot of that boils down to the fact that I have to wind up watching some things at home because there's no amount of money in the world that's going to get my wife to the theater to see Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
But at any rate, I mean, and I mean, I never really was that fascinated with the whole Mummy character to start with. Mm-hmm. But I did have to admit the previews and stuff that they showed of it, it looked like it could have had potential.
And it did, and that's where I feel like this movie was not properly advertised. Like, how they were advertising this movie, that it was going to straight up be a fucking horror movie. And it wasn't. It wasn't a horror movie at all. Yeah, there were like one or two spooky moments, but for the most part, this was an action flick. This was hands down an action flick. You don't have a fight in the third act like Tom had without it being an action flick. And Or hell, the fight he had with Russell Crowe in the second act. Like, that shit belongs in an action movie.
But you don't have a Tom Cruise movie and not have action.
Yeah, exactly.
It did seem a lot less comical than the Brendan Fraser ones, though.
Now that, I will say, was the Brendan Fraser, the Stephen Sommers version of The Mummy, was it funnier? Yeah, to a point, because it was a more lighthearted story, where this one is very much rooted in the I will destroy everything if you give me even the slightest amount of chance, and you're going to help me whether you want to or not. Where with the Stephen Sommers movie, yeah, you had the wide-chinned, handsome, rugged-looking Brendan Fraser as the hero. You also had the plucky comic relief in John Hannah, where you didn't really have that this time around. The movie was carried by the chick playing the Mummy, and I do apologize for not knowing her name, because she's actually a pretty damn good actress, and Tom, with a small spot of Russell Crowe being in it. And Russell Crowe's character, I feel like, is going to be kind of the linchpin out of this entire dark universe, because he's the head of, like, just calling it what it is, it's Hellboy's Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense. And it's led by Dr. Jekyll. And there were 2 points in the movie where Mr. Hyde came out, and it was actually pretty entertaining. So, like, I'm very curious to see what they're gonna do with this oncoming dark universe, if it didn't already get torpedoed into the ground. So, next movie on the docket.
By the way, the actress that played the Mummy was Sophia Botella.
Yes. Yeah, she was the Mummy. She was also in The Kingsman, which is why, like, hey, I know her, and I think she's also in a movie that I'm pretty sure you're going to be talking about coming up here in a few, because I know you saw it, but I didn't. So, next movie on the docket, I saw it because I was genuinely curious about it. I do kind of dig biography movies, life storytelling, depending on the character and everything, and that is All Eyes on Me, the story about Tupac Shakur. Again, because I'm horrible with names, I definitely have to tip my hat to virtually everybody in that cast, from the person who played Tupac, to the person who played Suge Knight, to the person who was portraying Jada Pinkett. Everybody knocked it out of the park. If this was a story that interests you, if VH1 Behind the Music wasn't enough for you, it's definitely worth a look. And it does end where you expect it to end, at that night in Vegas. But you get a lot more of the backstory of what was going on with Tupac, and his relationship with Jada, and how it affected her when he died. And it was supremely well acted. It really, really was. And if nothing else, it made me terrified of Suge Knight again. And I've never even met the guy.
I've never been that, steeped in his career, or,
Yeah.
But I mean, of course, there was a lot of headlines about it, and I mean, you had to have been on another planet not to know about the guy. But I did have to admit, seeing previews for it, I thought that the portrayal of him and Demetrius Shipp here that played him, I mean, the likeness was shocking.
Yeah, it was frightening how much he looked like him.
Yes.
When this movie came out, I mean, I don't think it was out very long, was it?
It was in theaters, I want to say, for about a good month and a half. And I think it's only because, like, and I know it sounds bad to say, but this is how Hollywood works sometimes, especially when you have the older folk running things. I feel like it got typecasted when it came to theatrical releases, only releasing in what they consider urban areas. For those of you that can't see, I totally just did quotation marks with my fingers.
I could tell by the tone in your voice.
Yeah, and it tends to suck when a movie that is potentially this good, like the same thing happened to Moonlight. Like, the people looked at Moonlight, oh, it's a story about a black man, so they torpedo it into the urban theaters, and it doesn't really get a widespread release. Yet you turn around and Moonlight won movie of the year. So
well, now sometimes it's not about the urban demographic. Sometimes it's about the funding behind a film. If it's an indie film, and Moonlight was definitely an indie film.
Yeah.
And an indie film has a tough time getting a wide release. And then you've only got a select number of theaters around the country or whatever that run any indie films.
True.
Now, I mean, around here, now granted, once it won an award or whatever, then it wound up getting some wide release time after that. Which is kind of sad that it has to go that way. But I mean, that's really the big budget films that come from the major studios, and most of those are superhero movies nowadays. They get the big advertising push money, and then these hard work dramas, you know, and things like that wind up as, I mean, you know, it's Fox Searchlight and Sony, some of the other ones, you know, that do that. But I mean, they're going to get small release in just a few markets.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a shame that it goes that way, because there's an awful lot of good indie films that I've seen over the years, and it's a crime that you better get out there and see it, you know, when you hear about it coming out, and see where those theaters are at, where those things get released, because if you don't, they come and gone in a blink.
Yeah, because they're not big money blockbusters.
Right.
And, I mean, you and I have made the comment so many damn times when it comes to describing movies, like, oh, it plays like a focus feature. Like, hell, some of my favorite movies are focus features.
Exactly.
And focus features are damn near every single time dramas. So, but yeah, I think it is out on DVD and Blu-ray now. I know it's definitely out on digital, so, like, if you even had a remote interest in Tupac Shakur, definitely go check out the movie All Eyes on Me. Alright, so next up on the docket is, and Dad, you're going to be taking center stage on this one, because I didn't get to the theater to see this one, even though I wanted to, and that's Cars 3.
I'm actually surprised that made the list.
It came out in the summer.
Well, I understand that, but an awful lot of people look at a Pixar flick and they say, well, that's a Disney kids thing, you know, and not everybody really looks at that as a blockbuster kind of thing. But I mean,
screw that shit. It's Pixar has more than earned its right to be on a summer movie list.
Yeah, I really give them hats off on
if
this
the cinema snob can review Woogie Loves, then I can review Cars 3.
Oh, God.
Shout out to Brad Jones, I love you.
Yeah, Cars 3 I really think was one of the things where they could have just taken 2 and skipped it. 3 was really the sequel that they should have done to, you know, behind the original Cars film, because they addressed it really well as basically having, you know, Lightning McQueen's had a big run, you know, but he's been at it for a few years, and you know, the technology keeps moving, and he's not the winner he used to be. Yeah. And he has a hard time adjusting to that, and you know, where he winds up meeting you know, different cars, you know, different friends and things like that, where he tries to think at first, you know, that he can just, you know, get at it a little harder, and that he can still get out there and do it. And you know, round before it comes down to the end, it turns into more of a passing the torch kind of thing. But they played some excellent comedy, and you know, you got some big names, NASCAR drivers and stuff that had good cameos, and they're probably one of the more hilarious things for me out of a lot of it was, you know, in the original movie, Strip Weathers was Richard Petty, you know, who's a NASCAR legend, and everybody knows, pretty much everybody knows, that his son Kyle, I mean, he had a successful career, but he was never a championship driver.
Oh yeah.
You know, but I mean, in this, it's like they took every opportunity when they were talking about Strip Weathers or whatever, you know, when they were talking about, you know, his sidekick or his teammate or whatever like that, and there was always this one sticking his nose out, and it was Kyle's voice. It was going, "I'm right here. You're talking about me. I'm right here."
Did this one have a darker tone to it? Because that's what the trailers made it seem like.
Well, in some aspects, of him not being able to cope, and having to realize that things were changing, and the guy Nathan Fillion actually voices a car that becomes his new manager.
Nathan Fillion?
And, yeah.
God bless that man.
And he's he's actually he's very corporate, and he's ruthless, and he kind of sugarcoats it like he's doing him a favor, when what he really wants to do is merchandise him, and the people that are supposed to be helping him, is just a facade, in order to do that. So in that respect, it does come off as a little more underhanded. But the one part that looks like it might be dark, so to speak, is when he decides to get back to grassroots, and he goes to a muddy dirt track one night that turns out to be a figure-8 demolition derby.
Oh Jesus!
That he was nothing prepared for, and what looks like is going to be a grim kind of thing actually turns out to be hilarious, because there's I think her name was Miss Fritters or something or whatever, but she's like a school bus with these big diesel stacks that belch flame.
Oh God!
Screaming woman's voice, that she's going to chase him around out there and bash him to bits. And I mean, he slings mud all over the place, and then purely by accident, he knocks her out of the race. But I mean, what I thought at first would, it did look like it could be, wow, this is going to get ugly, and before it was over with, you're actually laughing pretty hard about it. But on the whole, I mean, I really enjoyed it. They did a lot of homage to racing history in the United States, and a lot of good cameo things, and characters that they brought in were actually history based. I mean, they really dug in and did their homework. And to me, you could just go back and take the second movie and just wipe it off the map. Just move this one right up there next to it. It's what should have been there all along.
Right on. Alrighty then. So, next up. Oh, God, I gotta talk about this one.
I know exactly what this is.
Alright, so...
Don't keep us in suspense.
The big suspense blockbuster of the summer, Transformers: The Last Night.
Another one that you made me so happy that I missed.
Michael Bay, I swear to God, I don't know how, I don't know when, but I am going to find you, and I'm going to hurt you a lot.
Michael Bay is to Transformers what Wes Anderson is to Resident Evil.
Paul W.S. Anderson.
Okay, that too.
Yeah. Whoever Wes Anderson is, I don't know, probably hangs out in accounting. I'd give him the franchise at this point. You can't be doing any worse than him. Transformers: The Last Night moves us into a situation of... The Transformers have been around since the times of King Arthur. And the only reason King Arthur had the legend that he did is because the Transformers fucking helped him. They transformed into a dragon and laid waste to everybody, and everyone pointed to Merlin, and Merlin went, yeah, I totally did that. So, if Age of Extinction had laid any type of groundwork, it's that the entire country is now in a state of emergency, and they've pretty much declared a war on anything Transformers, Autobot, Decepticon, they don't care who. If it's a machine, kill it. And Josh Duhamel, I think his name is, the guy from the first two movies, he makes a return. No Shia LaBeouf, so thank God there. But it follows Mark Wahlberg's character, and Mark Wahlberg's character is definitely a lot more enjoyable than Shia LaBeouf's character, but that's not what we're here to discuss. The biggest snafu of all time was made with this movie, and it's that I saw it coming as a Transformers fan. They brought in Unicron. Kinda. And Earth itself is Unicron. And the only way Cybertron can be remade is if Optimus comes down and destroys the Earth. And I'm just sitting here going, oh, this ought to be good. And I never thought I would get sick of hearing Optimus Prime say, I'm Optimus Prime. But they put that to the test in that movie. I thought by the end of the first film we'd finally hear Bumblebee speak in his own voice, because he did at the end of the first movie, but they were like, nah, him talking through the radio is totally fine, let him keep doing that. And I'm just kind of like, okay. But the biggest piss off ever out of me was the whole situation of like tying it back to King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table and everything. Yeager? Yeah, Mark Wahlberg's character's name, Frank Yeager. That's it, Frank Yeager. He finds a damaged Autobot, and it gives him, like, this disc, and this disc kind of, like, symbiotically bonds with him. And, like, it kept him from getting shot a couple times. It turned into a key at one point, I think, but the biggest thing ever is when Bumblebee finally snaps Optimus out of his big, evil, red-eyed stupor. The knights in the area that they were came to life, and they were gonna pretty much execute Optimus right there. Frank Yeager runs over with an outstretched arm, screaming no, and the thing that was on his arm goes down to his hand, turns into Excalibur, and stops a sword that's the size of a skyscraper.
Oh my god. They're getting even more ridiculous than...
Alright, now the one question I have to ask, and I think, because this was another one, you know, I saw a few previews on it, and you and I had several conversations, you know, but I remember you saying somebody told you that Michael Bay's movies were actually holding canon for the comic book versions of Transformers. So, I mean, have you found... did you just throw all that out the window, too?
So much digging. Like, an audience, this is how you know I did some digging. I downloaded the entire American and UK run of Marvel's Transformers More Than Meets the Eye, Generation 1 and 2.
Wow.
That is 786 issues of Transformers.
That is some dedication.
Death Battle ain't got shit on me right now.
You're one guy, they're a team.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
It just goes to show where I was working, I had a lot of free time.
See, I think the thing that I was really disappointed about, I mean, I haven't really liked any of Michael Bay's movies on the Transformers, which I've really been disappointed about, because the effects and the realism, you know, the look of it is something that's pretty incredible. Mm-hmm. And you know, we talked so much when we kept seeing the previews for this that we were thinking that they were going to kind of act out the story that we saw in animation when the Quintessons resurrected Prime and made him evil, and, you know, Hot Rod had to stop him.
Yeah.
And, you know, we were really thinking that this was going to kind of be a passing of the torch thing, and you know, and it was going to kind of play on that. And while at the same time it kind of felt like a sacrilege, you know, that he was doing that, but, you know, at least you felt like, well, hey, you know, this might actually be some decent story here. And you had told me that Age of Extinction was probably one of the best out of, if you're going to rate them, that you thought that was one of the best out of the series of films.
I thought so.
So, but I mean, for once again, this is it. You know, you taking the bullet for the rest of us. You know,
you're welcome.
Yes, thank you for that.
But yeah, reading through all those back issues, like, there were some things that hinted yeah, the Transformers have been around for a very, very long time. I could have watched one episode of the animated series and figured that part out. I could have watched one episode of Beast Wars and figured that out and saved me a month of reading. But just the fact of, like, alright, number one, you bastardized probably the most lethal villain in Transformers history in Unicron, and you made it Earth. Fuck the Quintessons, fuck the creators of the Transformers, all this shit. No, we're just gonna have one floating bitch named Primus, which Primus is a thing, but the Quintessons built the Transformers. That's just how it is. And then you take... Now, granted, I'm aware that a lot of people don't like this character, but you have called me it for years, ever since I was a child, so I do have some sentiment attached to Hot Rod. And seeing Hot Rod being
reduced to a buffoon,
reduced to a French buffoon, just irritates me.
Yeah,
just irritates me beyond belief. Like, worse than what they did to Ironhide, because Ironhide was my second favorite. At least Ironhide they kinda got right, and then they doubled down and killed him.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that, you know, since reviews and things like that were so bad on this one, they'll finally stick a sword in it and it'll be done. So,
like they should have done with Prime.
I think, I don't think that'll do it, because I still think it made its money at the box office.
What a shame.
God, I hope not.
But, I feel like a lot of white people are seeing it, well, because kids, but then the other reason is you've got people that are like, yes, you were doing it for a review for the podcast, but you have a lot of people that are like, oh, I want to see just how bad Michael Bay ruined my childhood this time. Like, no, you're fueling the monster.
Yeah, and sadly, that is right, and I have been victim of that too. Hence why I saw Ninja Turtles.
Another brave soul.
I still haven't forgiven myself for that one. But alright, so let's move on to a good movie before I pop an embolism here. And move on to a movie that I didn't think much of it, but once I saw it, holy shit, it was good. Baby Driver.
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, Baby Driver.
I had heard it was really good. I was sad I missed it in the theater.
Now, Baby Driver, it follows a dude, ironically named Baby. Plays music. He is pretty much how they depict him, the best wheelman alive. Pretty simple story premise when you get down to it. He's in a bad situation. He wants out. He falls for a girl. Girl becomes endangered. Has to be roped back into that lifestyle, and things go horribly wrong, and then he has to drive his way out of it. Pretty simple when you think about it, but just very well executed. A fantastic cast surrounding this guy.
Yes.
And hands down, some of the best and realistic driving I have seen to date in a movie.
Amen.
Yeah.
And I definitely go with that, because me being a car enthusiast my entire life, Hollywood has in many cases been the bane of my existence, because it seems like their entire reason to live is to how many cars can they destroy and how many ridiculous scenarios can they come up with, and the whole Fast and Furious thing embodies everything that is ridiculous with Hollywood and cars. This movie was a refreshing breath of fresh air, because there was nothing that guy did with a car that was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Probably the only thing that even pushed the envelope a little bit was where he rammed into the guy's truck in the parking garage, and he just stood on the gas and pushed it hard enough that it popped the wire retainers and pushed it over the edge. And I mean, if that's as far out in left field as you go, I can handle that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing I really liked about it is that, I mean, while in the end it did wind up, I guess you'd say it winds up having a happy ending, but it also wasn't the situation where he got away with everything.
Yeah.
You know,
he
I
didn't.
think yeah, I think Need for Speed was probably one of the films that kind of first took that track of saying, okay, yeah, the guy survives, but he's going to jail.
Yeah.
And then after he gets out, then we can celebrate, you know. And that's kind of how this went. And I'm really glad they did that, even though I was thinking there for a minute that, you know, he was actually going to get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing I really agree with you on is the cast of people. I've never hated Jamie Foxx so much in my life. Yeah. And Kevin Spacey was amazing, and John Hamm just showed just how much range, you know, he's got, where he can be, you know, funny and compassionate one minute, and then a brutal, ruthless killer the next.
Yeah.
And, you know, in that respect, he was amazing. And yeah, I mean, just on the whole, there was so many elements about it that worked, and they fit it together so well, and they did such a great job of showing, you know, Baby's weaknesses, I guess you'd say, the things that made him like he was. Oh yeah,
like the ear condition that he had.
And it
didn't slow him down one bit.
No. It was kind of like back the old film Iron Eagle. Yeah. You know, where the kid could fly the jet as long as he played the right music.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, with this one, I mean, he had the headphones in and the music was on and he was on tempo, buddy. I mean, it was just nothing was going to stop him. And he was pretty amazing all the way. I thought it was really hilarious when I saw an interview with him, Ansel, his name was.
Yeah.
But he talked about riding in the car with the stunt drivers, you know, doing some of the maneuvers that they did, and he said it scared the living shit out of him, you know. But he said at least it was the fact that, you know, what they were depicting him doing or whatever. He said, yeah, we did that, you know. So
that shit right there, totally real. That stain on the seat, that's real too.
That's real too. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that, and I don't think it got near as I don't think it got near the credit that it deserved.
No, it didn't. Like, I feel like, actually, yeah, I think it kind of got overshadowed drastically by the movie that we're about to talk about next, and that's Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Now, this one was great. Yeah. I took the fiance to see this one.
Yeah. Well, why don't you lead us off then, man?
No shame in being overshadowed by that one.
Yeah.
No problem. So I really liked this one. I like that they didn't do the origin story just because, you know, it's Spider-Man. I feel like it's kind of common knowledge at this point how he got his powers, and plus we saw him in Captain America 3, so I feel like, you know, we already know who he is. We don't need an origin story.
Yeah, we haven't figured it out after 5 fucking movies. Like, we can't help you.
I don't know who I think's the best Spider-Man. I really like Tom Holland. I think he did a fantastic job. Hard to really say who I like better, because I still really liked Andrew Garfield. But yeah, Tom Holland did a pretty good job, I think, you know, as far as, you know, because I know they couldn't use Andrew Garfield for the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I thought Michael Keaton was great as the villain.
Oh boy, was he. Mm-hmm.
And that's something that a lot of people don't really understand. Like, when Michael Keaton is on the bill, sign me up. I don't care what movie it is. And so many people look at Michael Keaton, oh, well, that's Batman. Oh, well, that's Beetlejuice. Oh, trust me, he has a lot more range than that. What was that movie that you constantly talk about, Dad? What, Pacific Heights, I think it was?
Oh, God, he was ruthless in that. Mm-hmm. He was horrifying.
Then there was another movie he did with Andy Garcia where he was like a multiple count felon that was a positive donor for his son's bone marrow transplant.
Yes.
Yeah, he was an evil bastard in that. And then you'll turn around and he'll do something like Birdman, which is so off the wall that it borders on brilliant. The dude has amazing range. So many people were exposed to him as Batman and or Beetlejuice and nothing else. And I just kind of sit there and go, guys, he had so much more of a film career before he even did that.
That's the truth.
Yeah. But, once again, it does fall into the whole situation of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The tried and true, safe Marvel formula. And I actually mentioned this to my dad after I went to go see it. Not once did I ever fear for Peter's safety. Even in a situation where it was like, holy shit, he could actually buy it now. Not once did I feel afraid for him. And it was just simply because of how the pacing of the movie went. You knew he was going to be fine. And that's where I kind of felt like it fell on its face a little bit. But everything else about the film was fantastic. Other than the fact that, once again, we went through an entire Spider-Man film and he didn't throw a single fucking punch.
Well, I thought you summed it up the best way that I could think of it was that it was an excellent coming-of-age story.
Yes.
Because, like Justin said, we've seen the origin story. We didn't need that, and I completely agree with that. Matter of fact, when I heard they were making another Spider-Man, I was going, "Oh heavens, why?" And but then, when you told me about this, and I actually went, one of my lunchtime matinees, I went to see it, and I really. It didn't sink in until I saw it. It was like, we've seen the origin story, we've read that stuff, but it was always these questions like you would see on something like Honest Trailers. It's like, okay, he's a teenager, he's in high school, he lives in an apartment in Queens. Where the heck does he come up with all of the equipment and the ability to make a suit? And they addressed all of these things. They showed the rudimentary stuff that he did himself because he was smart. But the other thing is having Stark step in and hand him, the kind of technology that he really needed to utilize his power and his skill really brought that whole situation to life. And I think that was an incredibly good element of the movie, was him getting to know the suit.
Oh God, yes.
And especially after they took the training wheels off, that was hilarious. But yeah, the other thing I really liked about Michael Keaton was that, and I think you mentioned this too when you went to see it, was the fact that he was a villain and he was a tough villain, but at the same time he had a level of sympathy. Absolutely. About it, because you looked at him and was like, he was doing this, but at the same time he felt like he was in the right. And to me, that's the best villain, is where the villain is convinced that he's doing the right thing.
Yeah, and that's why villains like Magneto were always so intriguing. In his very essence, he believes he's doing the right thing, and that's why so many people like him. Take note, Capcom.
I really like that too, because I don't know, I feel like the whole I just want to take over the world, I feel like that's so golden age and silver age of comics.
Mm-hmm.
And I always beg the question, what do you plan to do after you take over the world? Like, what else is there to do?
And see, that's one of the things, not to stray too far off topic, and it's been out for a few years now. There was a movie done by DreamWorks, and it was called Megamind. And in the movie, he won, and he took over the city. And it was like 2 days later, he didn't know what to do with himself, so he goes and makes another hero. But yeah, go ahead.
One of the few performances of Will Ferrell that I actually like.
Oh yeah, God, my giant blue head. But yeah, when you compare it to some of the other villains, the ones that have that level of sympathy to them really wind up shining the best. Like Vulture was really good, especially the twist in the third act, where and it was a twist I guarantee nobody saw coming, where Peter goes to the prom and he opens the door and the Vulture's there to greet him, and you're like, oh shit!
That was such a fabulous twist on the whole thing of the guy being petrified of the girl's dad.
No shit!
Or whatever, and it took that and it threw it into orbit, man.
You could, when I went to go see the movie, because I saw it on the opening night, you heard a collective from everyone in the audience, and then you hear that, one guy in the back, oh, damn! But
I think when I went to see it, I mean, I was in there almost by myself, but I think I blurbed out, oh shit.
That was hands down one of the best twists that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has ever done. But looking at Spider-Man, you look at Green Goblin, you kind of go, okay, crazy, wants to kill Spider-Man. Then you look at somebody like Dr. Octopus, how they portrayed him in Spider-Man 2, and Spider-Man 2 is widely considered the best Spider-Man film of all time until this came out. And it was because, he had a mean streak in him, but he was doing it because he lost his wife, because he believed that the project could work and it would be for the betterment of mankind, but then he realizes what he was doing was wrong, and then he redeemed himself. And very few villains can give off that thing, you are an evil bastard, but I still like you vibe. And Vulture definitely did that this time around.
Yeah.
I also did like the cameos from Tony Stark.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, people were already joking, I'll see you guys in Iron Man 4.
But, I don't know, I guess it was a little predictable, the whole when, he took the Spider-Man suit away from him. But I guess I liked how they executed it, how he proved himself to get the suit back.
Well, and that's one of the reasons that the movie is so good, is, that one single line literally carries the entire film, that if you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it. And, yeah.
I'll tell you what, that quote is going to wind up on God knows how many things. I mean, it's going to wind up on shirts and cups and...
That's the new with great power comes great responsibility.
Oh, you bet.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But alright, so I feel like we could talk about this one all night, and we still have about half a list to go through, so...
Whoa.
Yeah. Some of them I think will glaze over pretty quick, but there are others that I know that we're going to talk about at great length, including this one, which is War for the Planet of the Apes.
Unfortunately, I did miss this one.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, it really is, because, the Tim Burton one from 2001 was pretty bad.
We don't talk about that one.
Yeah, agreed. But all the ones after that I've thought were pretty good.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this trilogy that this guy has been doing following Caesar, Andy Serkis's ape character, have just been absolutely fantastic, where, in the end, the only thing they want is to be left the fuck alone. And humanity keeps coming in and poking the bear, or in this case, the ape. And just... I never thought that I would sit there and look at movies of the past and go, a CG character did better than you did. And... goddamn, he knocked it out of the park a third time in a row.
I have to shamefully admit that I missed this one, and I have seen the other two, and I think they are far and away. I mean, the other ones, made, and we discussed that. I mean, they were probably the best effects that could be done at that time.
Yeah.
But this one just so far outdistances the stuff that's been done before, and I really had a hard time believing that this was going to fall on its face, because the first two had just been such a great ramp up, and I really felt like this one was really going to hit it. So.
Now with this one, it definitely takes it the furthest into the timeline it's ever been, where there's still very much a war going on. Like if you saw the end of the second one, there was no doubt a war was coming because a bunch of people were dead and they were going to blame Caesar for it. And you're in the thick of that war at this point, where the movie actually starts with a battalion of human soldiers tromping up into the mountains to go find Caesar and everyone, and it winds up turning sideways on them pretty damn fast. And because of what Koba did, the antagonist ape in the second movie, once they get taken prisoner and everything, they pretty much go with the assumption that, like, okay, they've captured us, we're all dead, we're going to be sex slaves for the monkeys. And Caesar just looks at all of them and goes, let them go. And everyone goes, what? If you don't come up here again, we won't retaliate. Leave. And the humans have, and pardon the pun here, the humans have evolved into these apes that still follow and believe that Koba was right, have started working with the humans to try and overthrow Caesar, thinking that they'll get special treatment when humanity takes control of the earth again, and it's definitely not the case. And this is all foreshadowed just by, like, a absolutely stellar evil bastard performance out of Woody Harrelson. Like, at this point, that man can do no wrong. So, yeah, I know I'm kind of alone on this one since you two didn't see it. So, if you haven't gone to see it, fucking find a way.
Well, that's all the more reason for us to go check it out now.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I still had strong notions that it was going to be really good, and you've cemented that. So I mean, yeah, it's only going to be a matter of time before it gets taken care of. So. Like,
the only gripe I will say about the movie, also special shout out to Steve Zahn, who played a chimp that used to live in a zoo when all this shit went off. So, like, he's been kind of out on his own, learning as he goes. He can talk, but he clearly hasn't been able to talk the way Caesar can talk, or the way that the humans can talk. He talks kind of almost like the same way, like, what's the best way I could describe it? Imagine
the broken English thing.
Imagine if your dog could talk, and that's Steve Zahn in this movie, where it's just like a whole lot. Oh, big noises over there. No go there. Yeah. And he winds up bringing this charm and riotous comedy to the movie in what is mostly a pretty serious damn film. But outside of that, my only gripe with the movie is, like, when you segue into the second act, They find this prison where, like, all the apes are being held captive and all this different type of shit, and Caesar winds up in there with them. I felt like the prison sequence kind of drug along a little bit, but there was nothing in there that I could honestly tell you, well, they could have cut that out and it would have been fine. Because it may have drug, but every little piece in it was important for what was coming in Act 3.
Okay.
Yeah. Alright, so let's move down the list a little bit here. Did anyone see Dunkirk?
Unfortunately, you know what? I don't even remember that coming out, to tell you the truth.
Oh, I remember. I was bombarded with it every single time I went to the theater. God, remember that? I forgot what movie it was that you and me went to, Dad, but, like, it was like every 15 seconds we got another 30-second snippet of Dunkirk. I was just like, I get it, it's coming out.
Yeah, we got peppered with it. You know, honestly, I think that wound up not doing as well, because I had several people tell me, you know, people on Facebook and stuff like that, they said, do yourself a favor, you know, Google Dunkirk and do a little reading, and about what was going on, and that's going to help clarify things, because if not, when you actually, it's not that the movie wasn't powerful and that it wasn't really good, it was just the fact that they didn't really clarify the history of what was going on.
Yeah.
At the time. If you had that information, then you got a lot more out of it. If you went in there and you didn't have that, then you walked out going, well, I'm not exactly sure when that was taking place, and that type of thing. So because honestly, when I saw the first preview for it, I thought it was another movie about the Normandy invasion, and as it turned out, it wasn't about that at all.
Yeah. Alright, so next up on the list, I think this is another one none of us saw, and it came and went faster than a sunrise, and that's Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets.
Oh, that one purposely, I rolled over and went back to sleep.
When you said it came as fast as it entered theaters, actually, I thought you were going to talk about that one shark movie, 47 Meters Down, or whatever that was.
Oh, that didn't even make my list. That shows you how much I cared about that one. Alright, so moving on to the next one, which was a Fathom event. And you and me went to go see it, Dad, and that is Starship Troopers, The Traitor of Mars.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now talk about being pleasantly how about let's call it pleasantly amazed.
Yeah.
Because I went to this, we had some extensive conversation about this. We know that the direct to video sequels were definitely less than stellar, and I know you told me to watch you told me to watch the CG version, Invasion, which I've had a hard time getting my head around CG. Film, the style of it is just something that has yet to impress me, and I can happily say that when we went to see this, that technology, and we mentioned earlier something about that the Japanese people taking the reins, and being the Fathom event, we got all that interesting information in the run up. About
I had no idea this thing had been around since the 1950s.
So the fact that people that are better at animation than anybody else on the globe got their hands on this, and then that they decided to go that, hey, it's time for us to step up to motion capture, and you can see where they took that technology and combined with all of the stuff that they already do on a stellar level.
Yeah.
And they delivered something that has to be one of the most lifelike animation films I've ever seen. And the fact that they took all of those sequels and they discarded them and said this film picks up where the first movie left off.
Well, it picks up right after Invasion, because his name was we didn't know his actual name. He just goes by Rat's Ass, and that's what it was on his uniform, so that's what we're going to call him.
Right.
Yeah. It takes place right after Invasion because Rat's Ass is like the officer under Rico, and he was very prevalent in the last movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was a good story. I thought it was well told. Getting the original people back as the voice actors, really delivered a lot of punch. The whole way that they played the power crazy woman, that was trying to be the Sky Marshal and run everything, based on her popularity.
God, she was a bitch.
Yes, indeed.
Jesus.
It was an awful lot of good stuff, and their armor suits, were a lot better. They had better equipment. They were still drastically overmatched, when it came to numbers.
Oh yeah.
And that type of thing. And it still got down to, God, they're still shooting bullets. We're this far into the future and we're still shooting case bullets. And I'm just not getting that. But everything else that they had, took a big step up. And yeah, I thought the way they handled all of it, it came off really well, and it was nice to go see something, that maybe you were a little skeptical about or whatever, and have it turn out far better than you ever hoped it would.
Yeah. And the fact that like we saw it in theaters at a Fathom event, like he said, we did get a bunch of those like little blurbs and featurettes before the movie and everything, where you kind of made the comment of like he always tends to play like Johnny Rico kind of like a cowboy, and then the director just straight up went, yeah, we wanted to kind of portray a John Wayne type of character with him, and I was like, that explains a lot. But I mean, overall, it was one of the first times where like you wanted to care about the characters in the very first film, but they died quicker than an episode of Game of Thrones. But you look at this one, and okay, they're not dropping left and right. Some of them do wind up dying, but for the most part, the squad, in its almost entirety, survives the entire film. And it makes you more invested in the character development, knowing that they're not going to expire within the next few minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I had that bad Quentin Tarantino moment, though, when that one guy, I don't remember his name, but the one guy on the squad that whenever they were doing the training simulations,
he always died.
He always got ripped in half by a bug, you know, and then when it actually happened to him, you know, you're sitting there laughing, going, hey, you got ripped in half, and wait a second. He really fucking died that time. That wasn't nice, you know.
Damn. But I mean, yeah, it was an absolutely great performance out of Casper Van Dien. Dina Meyer, as much as we love her, I feel like she kind of got shortchanged. But at the same time, like, yes, they advertise that, oh, it's supposed to be the return of Dizzy and all this different type of shit, and you go, we saw her get impaled in the first movie. There's no way you're actually coming back.
Well, I mean, when we got the preview stuff, and the director said that it was one of the reasons he was so happy with this script was that they found a plausible way to weave her back into the story.
And they did.
They definitely did that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Alrighty. Now, with that being a Fathom event, you don't have to wait for like DVD or anything for that. Like, you can actually go download that right now and go check it out. So
it was available the next day.
Yep. Yeah. So definitely check out Starship Troopers, The Traitor of Mars if you have the chance. Next up on the list, you saw it, Dad, and based on your review, I went, I'll wait. And that is Atomic Blonde.
Yeah. Now, that film actually got some pretty high review ratings. Mm-hmm. And I honestly think a lot of that, and I'm belittling the male population here, but you know, I think a lot of it was the fact that it was Charlize Theron. There were a lot of nude shots of Charlize Theron. There's a lesbian love scene with Charlize Theron.
With the chick from The Mummy, no less.
Yeah, you know, and I mean, there were elements to the film that were really good, and there were whoever choreographed her fight scenes. I mean, she wasn't the one, you know, she didn't really rely on weapons, you know, she was really great at hand-to-hand and, you know, using various household items to off people, nice. You know, which made it kind of intriguing, you know, and those fight scenes were choreographed fabulously, because sometimes, you know, they make things happen so fast and blurry that you really don't see what's going on, you know, whereas this, you were watching her and it's like, damn, she hit him there, and she did what? And she did, you know, I mean, it was like, damn, this woman is tough, you know, and in that respect, those things were really very good. But I guess part of it was a little bit from the previews, you were kind of expecting a female James Bond.
Yeah.
And actually, I would have to say it was probably closer to not in the vein that Jason Bourne didn't know what he was doing, because she's fully cognizant of her mission. But it's really a lot more like a Bourne hitman kind of character, as opposed to an undercover agent. Mm-hmm. But to me, the biggest, I know it was adapted from a graphic novel. And
you just answered my next question. Wasn't it based on a comic book?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think in the frame of a comic book where you have somebody with sunglasses on and someone smoking a cigarette, for a frame in a comic book that delivers a lot of imagery in one picture. In the movie, they took that imagery and they absolutely beat it to death. It's like every other frame you turned around, she's got sunglasses on, and it's a slow motion thing of her smoking a cigarette, and it's a slow motion of James McAvoy smoking a cigarette, and the whole movie is being told through her being debriefed by her superiors, and the whole time they're talking to her is her blowing smoke and smoking. And it just, to me, it was like you spent so much cinematic time focusing on that. It was like, Christ, can we get through this and get on with the story?
Yeah.
And it was a Cold War time period piece. So, I mean, in a lot of respect, it has some really positive elements. But and then the other thing was the soundtrack. I mean, obviously you had time period soundtrack, but the soundtrack was basically beating you over the skull.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there were some places where it worked when it was this high intensity action, but then there were other times, where it really wasn't any action going on or whatever, but it's like the speakers in the theater, it's blowing you out of the chair, it wasn't a backdrop to what was going on. It was overpowering.
Kind of like what we experienced just a couple days ago with a movie we'll talk about here in a bit.
Yes, a little bit.
I was gonna say, so where like Guardians used their time period music right, this one did it wrong.
I would agree with that. Yes, Guardians was able to use their music, their time period music, and it made it like an embellishment. And a lot of times the choice of the music was something that actually got a little lighthearted laughter out of you. And in that respect, I think that really added to it and made it good. Whereas this, it's using certain pieces of music or whatever, and it's being set to what's going on or whatever, but it's almost like it was distracting you from what was happening. And it didn't really add anything as far as the entertainment of saying, wow, that's a great choice for this particular scene of what's happening. So, I mean, on the whole, it was a big downer for me.
Alrighty then. Well, let's go ahead and move on to the next film, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to be taking center stage on this one, because I know you didn't see it. The Dark Tower. Justin, did you get to see that by any chance?
No. Refresh my memory on what that one was about.
It was the Stephen King film, featuring Idris Elba being like the gunslinger, and Matthew McConaughey was the devil, basically.
Oh yeah, no. Unfortunately, I missed that one.
Don't say unfortunately. You didn't miss much.
Oh, okay. Well, that is the thing with Stephen King movies, that they're very hit or miss. Unfortunately, more miss than hit.
Yeah. Now, I did have a bunch of people tell me, like, go read the book and you'll see why this is so bad. And I was like, well, I mean, I didn't read the book, and I still thought the movie was bad, so I don't know what I needed to read the book for. The premise of it, when I saw like the theater, God, only doing one take of this, damn it. When I saw the previews and everything for it in the theaters, I was honestly getting intrigued, because like I like Idris Elba. I mean, I've been campaigning for him to be Green Lantern for a couple years now, and it was nice to see something with Stephen King's name on it that didn't look like something like The Langoliers, or The Mist, or The Tommyknockers, or It, or just... It looked like something new and fresh, so I wanted to give it a shot, and the kid didn't seem displeasing, and I like Idris. I definitely like Matthew McConaughey, so I was like, alright, let's give this a shot. And the plot of it is so vague that, like, oh, if the tower falls, then everything will be destroyed. How? How will it be destroyed? Oh, it'll just be destroyed. And I need bullets. We need a lot of bullets. Do you have bullets where you are? You're probably going to like Earth. Yeah, we got a lot of bullets. And it was just kind of like, I can't follow any of this. And it just wound up being a train wreck from start to finish with a couple moments that made you giggle. And the gunslingers were supposed to be like this big line of defense against the dark figure that Matthew McConaughey is supposed to be playing. And it's like the first time you see them go up against McConaughey looks at one of them and goes, "Stop breathing," and the guy drops to the floor and dies. And the only reason Idris Elba is of any significance in this film is because like his magic or whatever doesn't work on him. So it's okay, cool. We're now in a Rambo situation because he can still get shot, but he can't do the magic thingy on Dude Man over there. And you just kind of sit there finding yourself about 90 minutes in going, "Get to the shooting, please."
These aren't the droids you're looking for.
And if you didn't know the Gunslinger's Oath, don't worry. They're going to beat it mercilessly into your skull by the end of the movie, because every other line is, "I don't such and such. He who such and such has forgotten the face of his father." What's in that can? Oh, it's sugar. He has forgotten the face of his father. That doesn't make sense. Whatever. It's the Gunslinger's Oath. I'm just like, oh my god, just move on. Just move the fuck on. So, that just wound up being like a big old waste of money for me, in my opinion. Now that that's out the way, let's move on to something that was worth the money, and that's Batman and Harley Quinn. Now, for those of you that had no idea this movie was coming, I did, because I keep tabs on the DC Cinematic Universe. This was made by the people who did Batman the Animated Series. It has no continuity with the rest of the animated movies that they've done whatsoever. This, on a whole, was a love letter to the people that watched and loved the animated series. And you see that going throughout the movie, where you're pinpointing things and they're saying and doing things that they wouldn't have had a shot in hell of getting away with as a Saturday morning cartoon.
So this was part of the DC animated universe?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, Batman winds up going after somebody called the Floronic Man, and I looked at that name and laughed, and turned out he was an alien, and I was like, oh, okay. And he teams up with Harley Quinn, and they're trying to recreate the experiment that Alec Holland did that turned him into Swamp Thing, so they can control all the green on Earth and basically take over Earth. And with Ivy, her closest confidant was Harley Quinn. Harley becomes the only option of trying to figure out where she's going to go next, and Harley kind of going, if you're going after her, I'm going with you. And how Batman just deals with the situation. If you thought Batman was grumpy before, hold on to your hats.
When I think of Batman teaming up with Harley Quinn, I think of Injustice, like from the first game.
To a point. I definitely... There are a lot of people that love the original voice actress of Harley Quinn. I am actually one of the people on the boat that, like, I love Tara Strong as Harley Quinn. I've always thought her bubbly voice and personality fit Harley better. This Harley is a lot more down to earth. She definitely has that attitude of, I've seen some shit, and I'm trying to stay away from that shit, so any asshole with a cape and mask, kindly fuck off. And then winds up getting roped into the situation, whether she wanted to or not. Even going as far as fucking Nightwing in the movie. Just to prove a point that, oh, and here I thought you didn't like girls. and just hops into bed with him.
Yeah, but after you've seen Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, you can't really argue that point.
Yeah, just go right ahead. I don't blame you, Nightwing. It's one.
The only way that would have been weirder is if that was Red Hood.
I guess. I don't think Harley would have been that choosy. But when I say that they were getting away with things that they wouldn't have gotten away with in the original animated series, I remember very distinctly Dad showing me a picture, and it was a picture drawn by Bruce Timm and all of them, and in there were little subtle things that, like, these were like the 7 things they weren't allowed to do in the cartoon, and like one was bloodshed, one was broken glass, holistic figures, cursing, nudity, and anything remotely sexual, and like I think one other thing. But yeah, they took all of those things and threw them right out the window and like, we're gonna do them all. We're gonna curse, Harley's gonna fuck someone, then she's gonna shake her boobs in a nightclub, Batman's gonna kick somebody in the nuts.
This was the Warner Brothers animation version of George Carlin's 7 Dirty Words You Can't Say on TV.
Yeah, but I mean, the plot of it is... It's not the strongest plot in the world, but it holds up enough to be like a 90-minute feature. It's not that long. And everybody acts their parts incredibly well. Kevin Conroy and the guy who originally did the voice of Nightwing and Robin came back to reprise their roles. I forgot who they got for Harley Quinn, but it wasn't the original actress. But she played her part incredibly well, especially when it came to annoying Batman. And Batman's begrudging acceptance of her being a part of this team and everything really shined when it came down to like the final act of like, no, Harley, you're not going. And why not? Because I don't want you to have a change of heart because you can't bear to stop Ivy, or you suddenly think her plan makes sense, or because it's Thursday. And I lost my shit right there. But yeah, like neither one of you saw this. I'm actually kind of surprised at that.
I mean, I know I missed it at the theater, and then when it came on iTunes, I mean, it's one of those things I wound up adding to the wish list, but I still never did get around to it.
Oh, gotcha. Well, you've heard me John about it long enough, so let's go ahead and move down to the next movie. And this is a movie that it's possibly a candidate of my favorite movie of the summer. If it hadn't been for a couple of slow moments getting up to the good stuff, and that's The Hitman's Bodyguard. Now, when I first saw previews for this, I thought this was going to be the most riotous thing I will ever see in my life. And it wasn't far off.
Yeah, it didn't miss by much.
Yeah. Well, since I just jawed on a little bit, you take stage on this one.
Did Justin see this?
The Hitman's Bodyguard? No, is that on DVD yet?
No.
I don't think it's
It's
available
still in theaters.
Yeah.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I have some homework to do over the weekend.
God damn, Justin, dropping the ball.
What I thought was really hilarious, and this is going to sound well. Number one, this was an opportunity for Ryan Reynolds to do a very similar brand of comedy that he did, like when he did Deadpool, which is probably got. I mean, that to me, that's got to be him in his element. You know, the brand of comedy that he does the best, and you know, blended with a little action, and his level of sarcasm is just phenomenal. But the other thing is that Samuel Jackson has long had this reputation of being the purveyor of the word motherfucker, you know, and they actually I almost wonder if he got paid based on how many times he said it in this movie. But the great part was that they actually turned it into a joke, because at one point, Ryan Reynolds is complaining to somebody else and goes, how can somebody ruin the word motherfucker? But he managed to do that. He's exactly. Yeah,
but I hope they kill him. I really hope they do.
There were a few scenes in it. I mean, that were just so them getting jammed together, in this uneasy relationship, of him having to make sure that he gets to court alive.
Yeah.
And them tolerating each other, but yet learning something about each other the farther that they go along, and the more often they keep avoiding getting killed. And it's, by the end of it, it's like he's protecting him so begrudgingly, it's ridiculous. And at the same time, it's what makes it. And there's just a few choice scenes. I mean, there was a lot of comedy in it, but some of it was just so raving funny. It was when he was sitting in that city square, talking to the guy that I guess he got a latte or coffee or whatever, and these cars are crashing and the guns are shooting. I mean, there's all this mayhem that's going on behind him. It's just flying by left and right, and it's like it's almost like, okay, I'm waiting for all of this to pass, and I'm going to finish my coffee, and then I'm going to get up and go do my job. And then when they went into the parking garage to steal a car, and he chose to steal that little ratty-ass Ford. I think it was a Ford Fiesta, or what, instead of taking the expensive Jag or whatever, I think it was next to it or whatever, but they took the Ford Fiesta. And when they came flying out of the parking garage, and then the slow-motion look, through the windshield, with Ryan Reynolds looking like he's having the most exciting time of his life. And Samuel Jackson is sitting next to him looking like he just swallowed a bottle of salt. I mean, man, the dry against that, or what, and then him turning, I mean, it's like as soon as he flew out of the garage, this is supposed to be the big getaway, and the first thing he does is crash the car. And then, and then the whole layer behind that is, Samuel Jackson is trying to do this, but his reason for going through with it was to make sure that he sprung his wife out of jail.
Yeah.
And Selma Hayek that plays his wife, and they keep going and trying to question her. And if anybody ever gave her the opportunity, it was like, Selma, would you like to come play a raging Hispanic woman, and you're allowed to curse absolutely as much as you want because you'll never show up Samuel Jackson in the process, And it's exactly what she did. And then when they would have these flashback memories of how the two of them met, I mean,
oh god, those were riotous.
I mean, the whole Hispanic bar where he's sitting at the bar having a drink, and she's in a barroom brawl, these big hefty brawly guys or whatever, and she's kicking guys in the nuts, and then she cuts a guy's throat with a broken beer bottle, and the look on him is like, that's the biggest turn on he's ever had in his life.
I'm in love.
There were so many elements to it that worked together so well. I mean, when Ryan Reynolds had the fight scene with the guy that was chasing him in the hardware store,
yeah,
and that was some creative use of hardware equipment. And then the guy who was like working there, you're wrecking his store, and then he's got this guy with a chain around his neck, and it's like, I could finish him off if I could just reach that hammer. And the guy is staring at him like, really? You expect me to help you?
I thought the bit at the end, because spoilers, they do get free and everything, the two of them slow dancing in the bar while there's a brawl going on around them, and there's a guy on fire running past them. God, it was too perfect. It really was.
I gotta give them credit. I mean, that's probably been one of the things that you went expecting a comedy, you went expecting a spoof, and you wound up getting that and so much more.
Yes.
That's what really that is cake and the icing and eating it too, and that's about as good as it gets.
But all right, we are approaching the final 3 on the list. I know for a fact you didn't see this one, Dad. I don't know if you saw it, Justin, and that is Stephen King's It.
It, yes, I actually did see that.
Awesome.
So yes,
um,
combo breaker.
yeah, it's about time. God, I'm starting to lose faith in you.
Well, faith restored. You know, a lot of movies are getting remade these days. This is one of the few I actually thought was better than the original.
Yes, for those of you that don't know, it actually started as a 5-part television miniseries where Pennywise the Clown was actually played by the great Tim Curry. And because it was on network television, they couldn't get away with certain things. They didn't have those restrictions this time, and who boy did they exploit it? Because the little bit about, like, you'll float too, and him dragging the kid down into the storm drain and everything, they upped the ante on that one right out the gate and straight up bit the 9-year-old boy's arm off before dragging him in. And I know a lot of people that have refused to watch it, even the miniseries, based on the cover alone, because, like, they have that fear of clowns or whatever, and like I've never had that, but if you do, brace yourself, because you might want to bring an extra pair of pants to this movie, because Skarsgård, it's not Stellan Skarsgård, it's like the youngest son, I think it is. He plays Pennywise the Clown, and I've never seen a clown be more terrifying and amusing in my life. When they put the CG work to him, and he shows the teeth, and he's got that really, really, really wide grin, and just some of the various ways he fucked with the kids in this movie. It was legitimately scary. It was one of those things that if I saw somebody going, thanks, asshole, now I'm not going to sleep for a week, I understand.
Maybe this is just going back to it, but I don't think the Tim Curry performance really aged that well.
Oh, no, not by a long shot. It didn't.
Also, something I did like was that, like, actually, I thought this was really interesting that in the Stephen King book, they said that Pennywise would terrorize the town every 27 years, and this movie came out 27 years after
the miniseries, yeah. I caught that as well, and I was like, clever.
Creepy.
Yeah, incredibly.
Also, I liked how in the other one, like, it was like the first part was like the kids, it was in the 50s, and this time it was like in the 80s.
Now they did change up the time frame, and understandably so, because I mean, let's be fair, in this day and age, anything that was relevant in the 50s would not really be all that relevant now, so changing it to like the 80s, and not only that, you said 27 years, right?
Yeah, 27 years.
Okay, how they dated it in the 80s, in 2017, that would be 27 years.
Yeah.
When we're going to get the inevitable It Chapter 2. Because this movie does end with them still as kids. The story does progress to when they're adults, where they make the blood pact and everything of like, if this thing ever comes back, we're going to come here and finish him. And that was actually something that I adored about this film. In the miniseries, they did have that little bit of like the Seth Green holding up the inhaler and this is battery acid, you slime, and scaring the monster off and everything. This time they went for like, okay, we're gonna go down there and we're gonna fucking kill this thing. Let's fucking go. And he winds up having one of the kids at one point, and he pretty much strikes a deal with him like, leave him, I'll just eat him, you can go. and like the best friend, I guess, or whatever. It's the kid from Stranger Things, and he sits there and he's just like ripping apart his friend of like, you made me do this, you made me do this, you punched me in the face, and now, and you see him just look off camera a little bit, and throughout this entire time, I see what they brought down into the sewers to kill this thing, and I just kind of sat there and was like, not one of you guys brought a bat? And you see him just reach off camera, and he has a fucking bat, and I was like, oh my god, get him, kid! Get him! And you just hear him scream, welcome to the Losers Club, asshole, and he just runs at Pennywise. And after seeing so many horror movies over the course of my life where I just sat there and went, why doesn't somebody just pick up something heavy and swing? They finally did it. It's like, you outnumber him, get him. And they did it, and it made me so happy.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I've personally I've never really found clowns scary, but yeah, I definitely think Pennywise was scary in this one.
Now, there is one scene that they did change from the miniseries, and I believe they also changed it in the book. Now, just for full disclosure here, I've never read the book. I generally have no interest in reading the book, because I know how out in left field Stephen King can get. In the miniseries, they opened up this book, and they're supposed to be, like, reading information, and then Pennywise is on one of the pages, and the page comes to life, and he's threatening them. And I still laugh at that scene to this day, because I remember what the Nostalgia Critic did. He was like, why don't you guys just close the book?
Mm-hmm.
And, he does the scene, and it's like, you hear Tim Curry screaming at him, and he just slams the book shut and just... And I'm like, yeah, that could have worked. This time around, it's a slide projector. And the slide projector starts moving on its own. And it keeps centering in on this, what looks like a woman with red hair, and the wind's blowing the hair in her face. And the slide keeps going, and they're panicking and trying to get it to turn off. And as the slide progresses, you see that it's actually Pennywise, and he's staring right at him. And he steps out of the projection screen and tries to eat one of them. And I was like, okay, that is... I don't scare easy, but that was a holy shit moment for me. Because I did not expect you to actually step out of the screen.
So, I would even go as far as to say it was one of the better horror films in quite some time.
Yeah, I would definitely say that. Like, I know my dad's never been a huge fan of horror films. I get a wild hair up my ass every now and then, and I binge watch a ton of them. Like, I think the most recently, I binge watched all the Friday the 13th movies for some reason. And, I enjoy, like, I guess you could call them a guilty pleasure. Like, I like watching them because sometimes they're so absurd that they border on brilliance. Or you sit there and you just nitpick things apart of going, you know, there's a shotgun right there, just turn and bang. Or my personal favorite has always been, and like me and my dad have talked about this a couple times, is like stuff like Nightmare on Elm Street. Oh, he's invading your dreams. Well, the person who's having the dream is in control of the dream. He better not come into my head. Shit's gonna go sideways for him in a big hurry.
Oh yeah, them lucid dreams.
Yeah. But overall, like, it was one of those things that I sat there and I was like, did they really need to remake this? Okay, I'll go see it for the sake of the podcast. And I was pleasantly surprised at actually how good it actually was. So I know they're making a chapter 2 because they still gotta handle it with the adults and everything. I hope they handle it with as much care as they did the first one, because in chapter 2 is when you see Pennywise for what he actually is. And God, I hope they don't just laugh themselves right out of the theater. I really hope they don't. But alrighty, one more to go before the final film, and that is Kingsman: The Golden Circle. Now, The Kingsman was something like I had put it off for so damn long, looking at it like James Bond on steroids, that it didn't really strike my fancy all that much. But The Golden Circle, I was beaten over the head with the previews of it enough that I was like, alright, let me go watch the first one and see what it's all about. And I immediately proceeded to kick myself in the ass for waiting so long to watch them. It is very much James Bond on steroids. It's most definitely that. But it's a movie that, like, it deliberately doesn't take itself too seriously, to the point that even in the first film, they're actually poking fun at it, of Colin Firth's character, like, oh, all that suave and debonair, just give me something to blow up. And I'm like, okay, alright, so that they recognize the audience that they're trying to attract. And this time around, the Kingsmen, for the most part, get blown off the map, all except the main character, who goes by the name Eggsy, and then Merlin, who's played by Mark Strong, who played Sinestro in the Green Lantern movie. Thank God he moved on from that. And they wind up traveling to America to meet the American version of the Kingsmen, called the Statesmen, who, instead of tailoring, they took up alcohol, so they have significantly more money and tools at their disposal. And this wound up actually being very charming, simply because of the villain. The villain being played by Julianne Moore, who is very much stuck in the sock hop style of, like, the late 50s, early 60s type of deal, where she has, like, this place out in the South Americas that looks like the old school diners, drive-ins, and soda jerk shops and all that different type of stuff, and every single one of her henchmen is tattooed with 24 karat gold in a circle, and that's how they indicate they're part of the Golden Circle. And she winds up, and it's almost clever how she did it. She winds up contaminating the majority of the drug supply in the world that, like, recreational use would cause you to go into, like, a stage 3 seizure where you couldn't move, you couldn't breathe, and all that different type of shit. And she had the antidote. All she had to do was get the American government to legalize drug trade, and she'd administer the antidote to everyone, and drugs could get taxed like cigarettes or alcohol. Because that was her kind of, like, her shtick the entire time. You let this be okay, you let this be okay, but pot and heroin aren't. So we're going to fix that real quick. And it was just incredibly well acted, of just the nice, prim and proper, happy, almost mother type figure. But when you look in her eyes, you see crazy. And it wound up working incredibly well. And then, of course, you had Colin Firth returning as his character that you actually thought died in the first film. And I remember saying this to Dad once. I had never struck him as a dude that could pull off the badass role, but he did it.
Never screw with anybody with an eye patch.
Yeah. Which the part of him remembering who he was and trying to get back into the swing of things with the loss of an eye, that was... It was one of those things where you sympathized with him, but at the same time you were kind of laughing at him. But just overall, yeah, it was really good. There is a special appearance by Elton John in the movie. Julianne Moore's character took him prisoner. And Elton John's bit in the movie is worth the price of admission alone. And when I make a comment of a movie that doesn't take itself too seriously, nothing speaks higher volume of that than watching Elton John dropkick a man in a flamingo-style Vegas lounge singer get-up. And in slow-mo, as he's dropkicking the dude in the face, turns and winks at the camera.
God save the Queen.
Yeah. Alright, so we are on the last movie, and I know it's technically not a summer movie, but fuck it, it's still 90 degrees out here in Virginia. Blade Runner 2049. Now, we just saw this very, very recently, and It is most definitely a worthy successor to the franchise.
I would absolutely agree with that, especially given the fact that the director Denis Villeneuve, big fan of the original work, always had been all of his life. I thought it was really interesting that when he found out that he was actually gonna, be able to do the project, that he contacted several of his friends in the movie business, people that were other directors, and had them each do a film short. So there's 3 film shorts that you can find on YouTube that each tell a bit of the story between the ending of the original movie and the beginning of 2049. And it's great fill-in material that's really only just touched on in the actual film. But I thought Ryan Gosling did an excellent job of he really kind of gave you an insight into the fact that he's a Blade Runner, but he's a replicant, and he knows he's a replicant. He's very aware of that, which was something that was ambiguous with the first film. It was that was the biggest on-running question: was Deckard a replicant? But he was like perfectly content.
Yeah, he was at peace with it.
Yeah, he's doing his job, and he knows that, until he finally runs across evidence that doesn't make sense. And then when he discovers that one of the implanted, or what he believes to be one of the implanted memories that he has, might actually be real.
Yeah.
And it makes him call everything into question. And I thought the whole business of him having the holographic girlfriend, really kind of gave you a look. I mean, the first movie focused on Deckard and him hunting the replicants that wanted to get to Tyrell because they wanted more life. You seeing what Ryan Gosling did in his off-work time, was a good showcase of the fact of what a replicant is basically dealing with. He's trying to function in a way that he thinks a human would function, and he's just unsure how to do it and how to react to it. And actually the holographic girlfriend turns out to be one of the strong characters of the film. I mean, she's like the conscience he doesn't have, or doesn't know what that is.
Yeah, like the best way to kind of describe the relationship between those two is like, if he's the body, she's the brain.
Kind of, yeah. And I mean, you see all of the enhanced skills that he has as a replicant. But when the business of him trying to chase down the evidence and trying to figure out what's behind this that ultimately leads him to Deckard. I mean, the way that the story progressed, was excellent. And Jared Leto, who plays Neander Wallace, who is basically the guy that took over Tyrell Corporation, or the giant corporation that he had basically swallowed Tyrell up, and he has turned producing replicants into, I mean, for lack of a better term, he's playing God.
Yeah.
And I mean, he wants to create replicants that have the ability to procreate. He wants them to, it's like he's trying to turn them into this huge, thing of his children. And I mean, you could look at him from one aspect and say, well, wow, look at what he's trying to do. And then when you see how callous and ruthless he is, killing, like when he went in and he saw the replicant that was just produced, and it was a female, and just for, I guess, just for the example of it or whatever, he just cut her open and let her bleed to death.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was almost like he was just saying, well, I can do that because I can. And he, it really he lent an incredible chilling aspect to a very quiet but very potent villain. And him tempting Deckard with another production version of Rachel, was really showing how low he was willing to stoop.
Yeah, that was haunting.
But at the same time, that where we were talking earlier about Traitor of Mars, about CG being used to its ultimate effect.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, I have never, ever, ever in any special effects film, have I seen anything look as lifelike as Rachel did. And I had gone back and looked, and they actually still credit the portrayal of her to Sean Young.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I don't know if Sean Young actually did that, or if they came in and did shots, or if she just added the voice to their CG work, or I don't know how they did it, but, I mean, whoever... they deserve an award for that one scene.
Yeah, because definitely no discredit to Sean Young, because she's not dead, but
yeah,
she don't look like that no more.
No. And any more than Harrison Ford did.
Yeah. Well, you still look at him and go, well, yeah, that's Harrison Ford. You look at Sean Young and you look at Rachel and you go, that's not the same person, even though it actually is.
Yeah. But I for the most part, I really like the way. Now, I do feel like that there were a lot of time that was devoted to the sake of cinematography, because there is a 40-minute parody between the length of the original and the length of this one. Mm-hmm. And I really feel like that there were areas that they just drug it out. It was almost like they were trying to make it suspenseful when I don't think it was really adding anything, but that's really a minor aspect to the quality of the film. And then the other thing where we were talking about soundtrack, you got this, not music, you got these incredibly overpowering sound effects that did not seem to have an explanation of what was happening on the screen.
Yeah.
And I found that really off-putting. I don't know what that was there for. I don't know what it was supposed to represent. I even went back, like at your behest, and looked at the original again, and you could tell some of those effects, some of those sound effects were there, but they were nothing like the level of what we were getting hit with in the theater.
Yeah, because I was sitting there the entire time going, well, maybe it's because we're in the smaller auditorium. This sounds like they're doing DTS instead of Dolby. Maybe it's just because of that, and no.
I did think it was poetic, and I guess once again you would probably call it an homage to the original. That Rutger Hauer, the scene that they call "Tears in the Rain," mm-hmm. Where his replicant lifespan ended, and he died as Harrison Ford watched him. Whereas in this one, you actually had Ryan Gosling, laying down on the stairs, and of course, I think he was perishing from injuries. It wasn't a time limit thing or whatever, but Lord knows that guy absorbed some punishment.
Oh God, did he?
Unbelievable, the amount, and I still, once again, we're not meaning to ruin things with spoilers or whatever, but that battle between him and the girl called Love. I really, it sounds ruthless, but I really wish she had bought it a lot harder than what she did.
Well, an argument can be made that's one of the worst ways to go.
Well, I guess that might be true, but she was, and I've got to give her credit as an actress. Mm-hmm. There. She, for somebody that had the appearance of beauty, that she does, but if there's ever been a femme fatale, she was Beauty and the Beast, ugly rolled together. An absolute ruthless killer.
Yeah. All right, so that wraps up the list. Yep, we're all done. Cool.
Outstanding.
Yeah, so that didn't take as long as I thought. I remember looking at that list and going, oh Jesus, this is going to take all night. But, alright, so we ended it this way before. Let's go ahead and end it this way again. We'll just kind of go in a circle. What was your favorite movie of the summer, and then what movie you're looking forward to? Justin, why don't you go first? Get you talking a little bit.
There we go. All right, so favorite movie? Oh, that's a tough one. I think I'm gonna have to say Wonder Woman, because it's kind of a three-way tie for me. But I thought, which movie would I see again first?
Yeah.
So I would have to say Wonder Woman was probably my favorite movie of the summer.
All right. And what movie are you looking forward to?
That's upcoming?
Yeah.
Definitely Avengers 3, without question.
Okay. And Dad?
And as far as a blockbuster, I would definitely have to agree that I thought Wonder Woman was excellent film. Blade Runner, I would have to be a hot second, but Hitman's Bodyguard, as pure fun, was really hard to beat.
Yeah, I'll definitely go along with that.
As far as what's upcoming, I would have to say that's kind of a toss-up between Justice League and Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah, those definitely do look promising. I'm gonna kind of go along with it a little bit, like where there are some that are contenders for like top movie of the summer. If I had to pick one out of all of them, I would probably have to pick War for the Planet of the Apes, with Wonder Woman being a very excruciatingly close second. And it's just simply for the fact that with Planet of the Apes, all right, I'm 2 movies in, I'm invested at this point.
Right.
So, where with Wonder Woman, there's only been a film and a half to really flesh her out.
Yeah.
Movies I'm looking forward to, I mean, definitely Justice League. After the trailer that they dropped today, I'm all on board, or all in, as they're making their movie pitch, it seems. And Thor Ragnarok, but I mean, I've never been super invested in Thor, so it's just kind of like, yeah, Thor's there. Justice League, give me that.
But I do think this next Thor movie looks like the best one so far.
It does. I still think the first one is the best so far, and I'm being biased to shit on that one because I know how good of a director Kenneth Branagh is. And he put Thor on screen and sold it in a way that I just did not think was possible. Like, the first time I ever saw, like, oh, they're making a Thor movie, oh, this is gonna suck.
I agree 100% on that.
Yeah.
Far exceeded expectations on that one.
And it's just simply because of, like, how good a director that man is. Like, almost everything all except Wild Wild West, almost everything he touches winds up turning into gold.
Well, every director has about 3 bad movies in them.
Well, thankfully, he didn't direct Wild Wild West, he just starred in it.
That's bad enough.
Yeah, that was definitely bad enough. And to think that was the guy that they were going to have to direct Superman Lives. I'm still curious to see how that movie would have gone, but at the same time, knowing the man that was going to be directing it, it's probably a good thing that it died. What'd you say, Justin?
I said, then probably a good idea it never happened.
Yeah. I mean, the documentary alone made me curious, like, okay, I think I may have liked to have seen Nick Cage as Superman, and then I saw everything that Kevin Smith said about the director. I was just like, okay, probably a good thing it died. Well, alrighty, that's going to wrap up, I believe, episode 4 of the Primecast. I hope you guys enjoyed listening, and thank you very much for watching and listening. And if you haven't already, whether you're watching this in the archives on Twitch or watching on YouTube, please do not forget to hit that subscribe button, leave a comment down below, and share the podcast around so more people can hear it. Thank you again for watching, and take care.